Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, and welcome back. I just want to remind you that you can get all my homestead science books on my website for a new way of teaching agriculture to today's youth and aspiring homesteaders by focusing on small-scale farming and self-sufficiency. If you're a school or co-op and need invoicing, please feel free to reach out to me directly. This also includes my newest products, Raising Self-Sufficient Kids, a book on intentional parenting, and also homestead trivia. So that is a trivia card game that's like really convenient. You can just take it with you anywhere. It's great for education, for, family game night. And the kids' version will be out by the end of the month. So you can play with everybody from preschoolers to grandparents. Uh, this, I've been working a lot on getting caught up in business. So, as many of you know, I travel a big chunk of my year, like mm, February or March, all the way through October. And then sometimes I'll do a couple of local conferences in between. And when I say local, like, you know, uh, less than a half a day's drive away. Something that I can just go the night before, do the conference, and drive home, which is actually what my daughter and I are doing this weekend. We're going to it's not really a homeschool conference. It's on like Christian parenting, but I've gone there the last few years. It's been a lot of fun. I really like connecting with the people there and having some new products. It's always, people are excited. They come back over and they're like, "Oh, we loved your product. What do you have new?" So that's always fun to get to share the new things that we have. And so I've actually come out with survival and then the survival basics mini course and then the two I just was talking about since this last conference. So that'll be a lot of fun to get to share those with everybody. Especially because I feel like I get to know these, the women who go to these conferences and I see them multiple years in a row. And it's kind of like getting to hang out with my friends because I'm too busy to actually hang out with my friends. But, and that's kind of where this conversation is going for the first part of today is that the trials of entrepreneurship really can weigh on me sometimes. I love what I do, my goodness. But you know, this last big conference we went to was Homesteaders of America, and we've been home for a couple weeks now. And I had these like grand ideas of I was going to catch up on all my work and be able to just create for the next like 3 or 4 months, and it was going to be so wonderful, and I was going to have all this time on my hands. And like I've literally been working 18-hour days to try to catch up. And then I'm super disappointed that I'm not caught up. And I'm 4 days into November now, and I'm not like lounging with a cup of tea and reading a book on like, food history or something to be able to come out with my next project. So, it's just something that I think as entrepreneurs and especially entrepreneurs like myself, I'm convinced that I can do anything and that I can do it all at once and that I'm going to come up with an idea and it's literally going to be in my hands the next day. And I mean, reality is that's not the case, but I don't think you'll ever convince me of that. So, and I've gotten really good at like running that procrastination line. Like I graduated with honors from college while raising two kids and taking 24 units at a time and still attempted to have a social life and did all my papers the night before they were due. And so I have that ability, but we're kind of at a place in life now between homeschooling and running two businesses and teaching at our homeschool co-op and just trying to maintain our house and our family and still have social relationships and all those things that just come with life. I mean, I haven't even been to church since I started traveling in the spring because if I do have a weekend at home, I mean, our family is just as important, like spending that time with the kids and working on our home for our own sanity. So I'm looking forward to just kind of rejoining our community. Um, so wish me luck that I mark a whole bunch of things off my to-do list over the next week or so, and I think there's like chance for it. I had a really productive day today. In fact, the podcast was like the second to last thing on my list, and I'm working on it while my husband's cooking dinner, and then I can go in and just kind of upload it and finish up my last project and maybe even get to bed before midnight. Like, yay me. Um, so that's just kind of an update on what's been going on with us. There's some other things we've been working on that I'm going to talk to you about with the podcast today. But one thing I want to remind you is over on like Instagram and Facebook and my Facebook group, Homestead Trivia, we've actually been playing, or Homestead Trivia, Homestead Science. We've been playing Homestead Trivia, where me and my kids were asking questions from the trivia game. And if you answer the post or answer the story or share the post or um, comment on it, just anything to, just play along, then I've been giving out free trivias. And I'm shipping one out in the morning and we're starting a new game. So, make sure you head over to Instagram and or Facebook, whichever you prefer, and check that out. Like I said, share the post, answer the questions, and I'll be giving one away every week through the end of the month. For not February. What month is this? I think it's November. It's November. We get turkey soon, so that's what's happening. Um, so this week's podcast is all about winter prep on the homestead, and not just the homestead, but kind of your home too. But winter prep it's something that I've had to deal with in every climate that we've lived in. I mean, we've lived on the Pacific coast. I lived in like hot central California. I've lived in the high desert of Oregon, which is an extreme winter. And now we live in North Idaho that has rough winters, but nothing compared to what we were dealing with in the high desert of Oregon. So when you're focusing on winter prep, like you want to make sure that like the animals have everything they need, that your gardens are put to sleep properly so you don't have a disaster in the spring. Because really what this all comes down to is like health, safety, finances, um, and time and convenience, which I guess convenience comes into time. So yeah, the garden's put to bed right, the pantry's stocked, the animals are properly taken care of, you're probably properly taken care of. Um, And because if these aren't handled in the right way, you could actually like find yourself in a pretty big mess. And sometimes it's things that you don't even think about. When you have like fences that aren't good and you have an animal getting out in the snow, you don't want to be chasing like your pain in the butt heifer on an iced over driveway. Like you just don't. I'm just going to put that out there right now. So make a list of all the things that really need to get done. I'm going to link some stuff for you. I have like a blog on this where then I've linked for each topic and I have some freebies and downloads and stuff. But make sure you're like checking all those boxes because it's going to be worth it for you. And depending on where you're at, you still have a good, month to 6 weeks before you kind of hit that like real hard winter. Like, I mean, everywhere been, like hard winter kind of starts, halfway through December and some, goes to like March or something. So, and even people who live in like some desert climates and stuff, there's different things that you need to consider. And maybe, for you, it's the opposite. Like you need to consider it more in the summer or, look at if you're getting those hard freezes. Are you prepared for a hard freezer to lose power for a week? I know we can. And I know that there's been some of that in like, like what was it, Texas last year, the year before? People lost power for like a week. Like they didn't have any way to water their animals. Like, I mean, it was a disaster. So, I mean, just really consider those things. Like it's kind of like low key prepping. But it's just winter preparation. If you want a high key prep, like go for it. But for us, we prep a little bit further than just for the next season, but there's definitely things that have to be done just in the winter. So, one thing that we always make sure we do is that we make sure that our animals' health is a priority. Um, so there's several things we do with our animals every year. And I strongly suggest like anybody else does it too, because um these animals, when you go into those cold winter months, like their bodies are working like so much harder. And so they need to be in like the proper health and have, everything they need in place so that you aren't well, I'll kind of get into all of it. So one of them is doing it all at once in the fall. It just makes it really easy to handle all the um health tests, like the annual health tests that they need. For our dairy cows to be able to sell raw milk, I have to get yearly testing done. If you have dairy goats, that's another one that a lot of times you have to get testing done on them. If I'm going to give any medications or vaccines, I know vaccines are kind of a iffy topic. I'm going to get to that here in a little bit, but this is a good time to handle that. Boost immune systems, make sure they have their probiotics and stuff. Um, you can handle like breeding things, culling, butchering plans, and grooming, like kind of all at the same time before all the bad weather hits. And, some of these things you should be doing several times throughout the year, but it's just really nice to have a plan like every fall to do this. You can get your animals crowded up near the barn, make plans for your veterinarian or your brand inspector, your artificial insemination technician, order the semen that you need, or even just make sure that you have friends or family over to just be that extra set of hands and get it all done at once. So I'm going to cover some animal health. I just want to put it out there that I'm not a veterinarian. However, I do have my bachelor's in animal science. I've been farming on some level my entire life. I do get that everyone's protocol is different, especially like whether you're organic, conventional, if your animals are for pets or if they're for meat, or if you're somewhere in the middle, kind of like we are. Like, some of our animals are production, some of them are pets. Um, we have some herds, like our milk herd is fairly small, where our pig herd is pretty large. I think we're probably one of the biggest pork producers in North Idaho, at least like way up in the panhandle. So with that, we're definitely treating all these animals differently in the way they're raised and what medications we give them and what protocols that they have. So, um, animal husbandry is like the responsibility of caring for your animals with respect. And I view respect for my animals as making sure their pens, pastures, and facilities are clean, safe, proper preventative maintenance practices, that they can't get a disease or get hurt from their pens, that they have um, the proper nutrition to maintain their weight and whatever they're producing, whether that's piglets or milk or whatever. So that's how you can show respect for your animals for what they're providing back to you. Um, when you have your animals all curled up, this is when I like to worm if I'm gonna worm, like, which is, giving them a wormer. I don't, a lot of my animals, I just, you know, um, I don't worm them a lot. Like my cows get some fly spray. My dairy girls, they will when they're dry, but not when they're lactating. I do have a organic, like essential oil fly spray I use on them when they're lactating in like the spring and summer and stuff because it's just miserable having all the flies on them. Um, most of my sows and my boars never get wormed. They have a healthy immune system. They are not dealing with a huge worm load. Um, and we feed them properly, like we're feeding them up off the ground and things like that. So they just don't have a lot of incidences of dealing with parasites. And I mean, even my ones that are out on pasture, which I do have some pigs on pasture, they, because their immune systems are so strong, I mean, all animals are going to be dealing with some parasite load, but their immune systems can handle it. Now, on the flip side, any piglet that's bought off of our property, I will worm it before it leaves because getting weaned and transported a lot of times, sometimes the same day, it's just really hard on their systems and they can tank super fast. And I would rather give them a wormer than like a vaccine or something like that, against a respiratory infection or have to give like preventative antibiotics. Because I feel like that's kind of lowest on the totem pole of things that we're concerned about, from a pharmaceutical perspective. Now, with my commercial pigs, the ones that they go to some suppliers that require certain medications and vaccines. Some of them go to like 4-H kids, and in order for them to show at the fair, they have to have a vaccine against a I think it's called urosyphilis. They have to have that to be able to go to fair. So I just go ahead and handle that shot for the kids so that they're not having to worry about it. I provide a lot of education for the 4-H kids and stuff. So that's just all kind of wrapped up in the package of the piglet that they get. There's some options for some organic internal parasite control. I do have some links to that on my website. And like I said, I'll link this whole blog. And it's just kind of it's up to you and what you want to do. However, a lot of people are like, we don't use any medication. Some people are like, we do this all completely conventional. Like I said, we're kind of in the middle on a lot of stuff. But where I land on that is I would rather not have an animal suffer than to make some of those choices with like the pharmaceuticals. So, um, take that as you will. Like, I have no problem. Like, if a cow has mastitis, I will treat her with antibiotics. That is painful. It's horrible. I'm not going to be drinking her milk during that time, anyways. I'm not just going to like rub a garlic oil on her udder and hope for the best because I just, I can't. Like, for the women who, um, have ever had to deal with anything like that, you understand where I'm coming from. And these cows, they provide a lot for us, and I'm just not going to put them through that pain. So yeah, when it comes to vaccines, I kind of covered that one a little bit. We only do the ones that we have to do for our markets. And I mean, what it really comes down to is our market is what pays our bills. And yes, I could say I'm not going to sell to that market anymore. But currently, the way that we've set up our system, that market is one of our biggest uh, cash flows for our business. And we wouldn't be able to maintain our herd or our homestead like at all in the way that we do if we were to just cut that out. Like that would have to be like a longer term decision. And that's actually something we have discussed is should we get out of the piglet market and just go with the meat? Where then, we could just not do any of the medications and say like no input farming. And kind of what we say right now is we say we're natural, low input farmers. And that our meat, like we feed an it's technically organic and non-GMO, but it's a lower cost feed that's made from the millings of organic and non-GMO feeds. So it can't actually, because it's a byproduct, it can't be called, it can't be certified, but technically it is. Um, our pigs are out on pasture. They're happy pigs. They don't get any medication unless they have like a really bad infection or pick up a parasite, which sometimes young piglets do. Um, so we only those are the only ones that get some sort of medications. I do note those. I don't put those into my retail cuts that people can buy out of the store or be shipped, but I will sell those as whole hogs or have that as meat for ourselves. And with the whole hogs, I'm having a one-to-one conversation with a customer where at that point I can say, a lot of people don't care. They're like, oh yeah, we just know it's farm meat and we're good with that. Some people I'm like, hey, just so you know, that pig had, we wormed that one when it was younger. And they're like, okay, whatever. Or they'll say, I'd prefer one that was not wormed. And then I'll just pick a different pig for them. So it is something that we could work towards, but it's not something that is an option for us at this time. So, I do have an animal health guide that goes over all the different vaccines that are options um, for your livestock. Like I said, the one that I we do have to do is there's certain shots that our dairy cows need in order for us to sell our milk legally. So we do those. I think it's brucellosis, which that's a one-time thing, and then they get a yearly TB test. That might be it. Um, I don't know. I go to my vet. He does. I do know, but I can't think of it right now, and I don't have it written down. So, anyways, with horses, one thing, especially if you live in a swampier climate, you have to look at West Nile virus. With beef and dairy cows, there's the brucellosis, the leptospirosis, the vibriosis. There's a 7 and 8 way colostrum. There's bovine viral disease, bovine respiratory disease. I mean, there's a whole list that you can a smorgasbord of vaccines that you can give, and you can talk to your vet and decide what's best for you and your program. A lot of these are also available just like at the feed store in the cold section, and they're a little cheaper then. But if you're not comfortable giving shots, then go ahead and use a vet. Sheep and goats. One of the big ones is CD&T. That one, when we had goats, we did go ahead and give that to them because one of them is colostrum, or not colostrum, is tetanus. And goats are naughty and they're always getting injured. And so I do like having them vaccinated against that. And then there's some regional vaccines like for sore mouth. That can just be really uncomfortable for goats. So if you live in a region that sore mouth is in the ground, you might want to consider going ahead and getting that vaccine. Again, I mean, if you're going to eat that animal, especially goats, you eat them fairly young, there's a really high chance that they won't even be exposed to it or have a chance to develop it um, before they're going to butcher anyways. So, I mean, again, talk to your vet about that. Now, another one that we do while we have them all gathered up is the animal health checks. Um, these really should be done like quarterly, monthly. Like you should be getting eyes on most of your animals every day. But I feel like fall's really important because of the nutritional needs that they have going into winter. So, I like to assess like the entire animal. Like I check out their body condition scoring, which you can Google that and get a list of what a body condition score is and how you should handle that and what the concerns are. But basically it breaks down to, are they overweight? Are they right on track? Are they a little underweight, or are they emaciated, which is, like they're starving. And in that case, that can mean they have poor nutrition or they haven't a worm load, or, with older animals, their teeth start getting messed up and they can't chew as well. And then, some choices have to be made. The next is, I check their breathing, their manure, checking for, parasites and if they're digesting or able to chew their food well enough. You can see a lot of that in their manure. Their stance in their feet, like how they're standing. Check their mouth, their teeth, eyes, ears, their skin, feathers, wool, whatever, you're dealing with. If they have patchy spots or something like that, they might have a nutritional deficiency. Like I said, you should be getting eyes on animals on a regular basis, but say even you have a herd of 20 cows that are on like a back pasture, you might get eyes on them from a distance every day, but you're not getting them into a chute and like checking their whole body on a regular basis. And then of course udders for both your milk cows and your beef cows or sheep or goats, because you want to make sure that they're healthy enough to be able to continue to feed their offspring. Because if you have one with like a bad teat or something, she may not be able to, a goat with one bad teat, goats, they have two teats and often have four babies. So if they lose a teat, like they may need to be an animal that you don't keep. Um, I took notes on some of this because it's just a lot. But grooming's another thing to handle during this time. It's, brush the animals out, spray for flies, clean their feet, make sure they don't have anything that's going to mess up their feet over winter because there's a lot of mud and things will get compacted like between their toes or in their hooves. Um, This isn't the time for trimming, shaving, shearing. Animals need that extra fur through the winter just to help them keep warm. Unless you're trimming for wound care, or if you have like a show animal that's going to be housed in a barn and needs to keep cleaner, then that's a whole different conversation. So I know it sounds like a lot of work, but I mean, it basically just becomes second nature. Just make sure you have everything you need beforehand. You've already contacted everybody. Um, because just the amount of time is worth it. So one of the things I didn't cover is breeding and culling. And so I want to go into that right now because that is something that we handle a lot of times in the winter as well. Um, Culling is not a fun topic. Nobody really likes to talk about culling. But everybody thinks that culling is automatically like taking the animal out to the back 40 and shooting it. And that's not the case. That's only one of the options. And honestly, that is like at the bottom of our list. Like we will do everything else that I'm going to suggest before we ever consider taking an animal, culling it that way. Um, but culling is very important for the health of your livestock, for the finances on your property, um, the finances for your homestead, also for just like um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just the respect to the animal. If you have an animal that's not going to make it through winter, why would you put them through the pain of trying to get them through winter? I mean, it's just, and a lot of times, you know, so I don't know. Let me keep moving because this is a hard topic because a lot of people get really upset when you start talking about culling, and I really want everyone to understand the bigger picture. So, it's really the reason we do it in the fall is to keep our herd manageable. If they're unhealthy and they're not going to make it through winter, or they're taking up barn space where another animal that is either very healthy or maybe kind of one of your in the middle animals may not get the care that they need or have space or the feed and things like that, you end up like it's inhumane. That's the word I was looking for. It can be a huge waste of money if you try to get an animal through winter and they end up passing away when they could have, you know, gone down one of the other paths. And so what these paths include like being sold or bartered, given away, butchered, or if you need to put them down. And even when we do put them down, if the animal is healthy enough, we will possibly feed them to our dogs or donate them to wildlife sanctuaries that are feeding carnivore animals. Sometimes I'll even feed them to my chickens if they aren't sick. Small parts. I mean, just chickens, they love the meat. So, now when I talk about this, I'm not talking about like the 35-year-old gelding that's lived on your farm its entire life and you've, chosen to let it live its life out on the farm, or the sweet old hound that can't even like get up off the porch anymore. Those are the animals you've already made a commitment to them, and you're going to be keeping them until their last day, and as hard as you can make that happen. I mean, you're going to keep that gelding in the barn and you're going to feed them the special, equine senior, and you're going to get them through winter because for another year because of the life you have with them, or your, younger kids can still ride them, or whatever the conversation may be. Um, what I am referring to is like, the old nanny goat that, hasn't had a kid in 2 years and no milk, she's just eating. Um, or the sow that only has, two piglets or kills a lot of piglets. They're not paying for themselves anymore. So they're officially wasting money. They're spending your money to feed them, but they aren't providing for your farm anymore. So there's a scenario I talk about a lot. We used to have a sow named Oreo. We actually did end up calling her last fall, but I'll get to that. Um, so Oreo she was only about 4 years old. We had purchased her from a local 4-H family. It was going to be our first time trying to breed fair pigs, something that we'd always bought piglets, raised them out either for our own fair pigs, our own meat, or to sell whole hogs. We've been, at least, as a family this round, I say this round, not like when I was a kid growing up and the stuff my dad did, but like what my husband and I did. We've been doing this for 8 years now. We started just the kids would do 4-H pigs. We would always buy twice as many so that they had backups, and then we would sell the pigs to come up with the money for next year's feed and stuff. So I mean, we've been doing this for a little while, but this was the first time we decided to farrow on our property. And she only had 3 piglets. We bought her bread. And so we're like, that's weird. Like most pigs have minimum of 10. I mean, that's a pretty standard. And so we're like, well, maybe she lost some like from being transported while she was pregnant. But then I've also learned that with pigs, if they don't have at least 4 piglets in the like two in each horn of the uterus, that the whole pregnancy will get aborted. And and she only had 3, and we like double checked her and everything. So I don't know what's going on, if maybe like one of her horns um of her uterus wasn't working or whatever. I don't know. So we were like, okay, it is what it is. We're gonna keep trying to breed her. So the next 3, 4 breedings that she only had like 4 piglets each time. And I added it up, and at the time, we needed a pig to have a minimum of 5 piglets a year to pay for themselves. So that's not very much. The numbers are a little different now because we've changed the way we've done our system. We've gone to a better feed. But I don't know. I did the math the other day trying to do something. Let me see if I can remember it real quick. It cost me 750 a year to beat a sow. Um, and then I sell my piglets for approximately 150 a piece. So yeah, it's still about 5. Of course, there's so many other costs involved, but that's just their feeding cost, like just that. So, um, she was kind of right in that window. I mean, she'd have 4. A lot of times we'd breed her a second time. So she was actually having about 80 a year, but I mean, she was still our lowest producing sow. And again, like I said, that's just the feed cost needing to hit 5. That doesn't include, just maintaining our farm, like the power for the barn, the fencing, the feeders, marketing, everything else that we do. That's just one piece of it. So, but something she would do is we had another sow that would often have about 16 or 17 piglets, but she couldn't maintain that many. And Oreo would like adopt those piglets and feed them as her own. And so I could split those litters and they each raise, 10 piglets. And so, I mean, right there, she was worth her money. So we kept her for several years. Like I said, we did end up culling her last spring or last fall, when we made our fall culling decisions. And our reason for that was that she hadn't bred back in 2 rounds. I don't know why that was the case, but her body condition score was wonderful. But because we'd had her for so long, we just couldn't bring ourselves to eat her. So we sold her as a sausage sow, which is where people will buy older sows and just grind them all into sausage so they don't get the flavoring of like older meat. Or they'll feed them to dogs and stuff. So they came and got her and took her, and you know, we were comfortable with that decision. We decided it as a family, and I often involve the kids in those decisions, especially if they've ever shown the pigs and stuff like that. Uh, Now we had another pig at the time that, so when we first kind of launched our pig operation, it was when we had moved to our new farm in 2019. And we had, right off the bat, we were looking for Oreo actually, because the kids wanted to do 4-H, wanted to try breeding their own pigs for 4-H. They've been doing 4-H for several years. And so we started calling around and, checking on Facebook and Craigslist and stuff, looking for either a bred sow or a breeding pair. And what we found is there just were not enough pig producers in North Idaho. Now, that has changed drastically since like COVID 2020, that type of thing. Like I said, I still think we're the biggest or one of the biggest. And kind of what we're doing with our um meat is a little, or with our product is a little more commercial than what a lot of others are doing around here. Um, like I haven't called every pig producer and asked, but we're definitely on the larger end. So kind of how we got launched is in early 2020 when all the meat processing plants had to shut down. There were piglets that were already born, but then had nowhere to go because they're, born on one farm and then they go to like a feeder farm and then they go to the butcher plant, at least in the commercial situation. And if the plants aren't butchering, then the feeder plant or the feeder farm has nowhere to open up space for new piglets to come in. And so then the piglet farmers have nowhere to sell their piglets and they already have bred sows. So, I mean, this was like it's a year and a half long process pretty much from where they were at already having bred sows and knowing that they had no markets for these animals for any foreseeable future. Um, and I mean, I was hearing of like horrible things, like people just like killing full, ready to go butcher hogs, just killing them and throwing them out back. Selling butcher hogs for $50 a piece. Just to give you some perspective, we sell our farm fresh hogs for $850 and that $850, and that doesn't even cover their butcher fees. The butcher fees are another about 300 on top of that. And we're one of the more reasonably priced ones in our area. So to hear about pigs getting sold for $50 a piece, I mean, at full butcher weight was just insane. Um, so we ended up hearing about a whole truckload of piglets that was coming from Nebraska and that they were selling the piglets for about $50 a piece. And we were like, score, we want some. These weren't going to be like our fair piglets. We just wanted to raise a few for meat. And so I think we got on the list for 3. And then we were telling some friends about it, and they were coming into town, not to our town. They were going to Washington and we're just like, I don't know, we were like 3 hours away from where they were going. So we were like, yeah, yeah, we want 3. So we started telling our friends about it, and they're like, hey, if we pay you 75, will you go get them for us? We're like, well, we're going anyways. Yeah, sure. So then I put it out on Facebook and was like, you know, these pigs are on sale for $50 a piece. I will pick them up and deliver them for you for 75. And I mean, people went crazy. We ended up doing 2 entire loads, totaling almost 200 piglets. Um, we made good money on it. I'm not even going to deny that. We were able to, cover all of our costs of getting the piglets, our gas for both trips. We bought enough feed to keep, like, I think it was 10 or 12 piglets ourselves, and like we were able to buy enough feed to feed them out. And so it takes about 1,000 pounds of feed, like half a ton, to feed out one piglet. So yeah, I think we bought 5 or 6 tons of feed. Um, so that adds up. And then we were able to feed them all out. We were able to pay all of our butcher costs. Um, and I sold them all as whole hogs at I think 750 a piece at that time. Not all of them. There was a couple that stayed back, but that's the story I'm getting to. So that was actually how we started our bigger pig operation. I took all the money that we made off of that and invested in a small herd of like a good boar and I think 3 nice sows. And we went from there. So we had this one pig. So there was 2 gilts that were left that we hadn't got sold yet. They were a little bit slower growers, and so I wasn't going to keep them for or I was we weren't going to sell them to a customer. We were just going to keep them and butcher them ourselves once whenever they hit the right weight. So we kept them back. There was two of them. One of them was a really nice looking pig. The other one we called Alien Pig because this thing like I don't even know. Like its tail was docked too short, so its butt stuck out weird. Like I don't know what was going on with this pig. But like I said, we were just gonna butcher it for ourselves. And our boar ended up getting in with them and breeding both of them before they were ready to butcher. Um, we're like, well, great. So the one pig, we're like, oh, sweet. Like we don't know what breed she is, but she ended up having like a beautiful litter. So we're like, okay, yeah, like we're gonna go ahead and keep her as a feeder pig or like a feeder producer. She had great litters, she fed him well, and we ended up keeping her for several years. I think we ended up selling her. I don't think we ever butchered her, but we didn't know what breed she was. I mean, she was obviously like she was white, and so probably like a York Lancaster. Is it Lancaster? Landrace, a York Landrace cross, and so yeah, she ended up being a wonderful pig. That alien pig, she had her litter and like dried up immediately. Like she had no milk. We were trying to save these piglets. We were nursing them like with little like kitten bottles. Like it was a mess. It wasn't worth it. She ended up, as soon as she dried up, we butchered her. Like there was done deal. Like there is no point in keeping her. We had not planned on keeping her in the first place. We kept her like 3 months longer because she had the litter. She was not worth anything. So, that's kind of between those two pigs. Like we call them Alien Pig and Oreo. We ended up keeping Oreo way longer than we probably should have, but she had value to us. Where Alien Pig was like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, like out the door. Um, so here's your options for different things you can do with culling. And one right off the bat is selling. And like it's not that like it's kind of like your garbage is someone else's treasure or something like that. But I mean, I don't want you to think of it that way because yeah, sometimes I've definitely sold naughty goats. And I'm like, they're a naughty goat. They aren't fun to raise. But if you're looking to just butcher it or have it be a lawnmower, have at it. I don't want it on my property anymore. And I've been very honest about what animal they're getting. On the flip side, say you've always ran both red and black Angus cows, and suddenly, or not suddenly, but as a family, you decide, you know what, we always make way more money off of our black Angus cows than we do our red Angus. We want to have a pure black herd, and we have, a handful of cows or heifers or whatever that would make great breeding stock for somebody else who either has a red Angus herd or just it has a mixed commercial herd. You can sell those, use that money to buy all the feed you need to get through the winter with your purebred herd, or use that money to invest in better purebred black stock. That's not throwing something away or trying to convince somebody to buy something that isn't a quality animal. It's a very quality animal, but it doesn't fit your um, farm anymore or what you're wanting to do with your business. Um, or sometimes, I've sold sows that were decent producing sows, but not great producing sows to like a 4-H kid that wanted to start a small operation and they just want like a sow that we know will breed, that's easy to work with, is good with the kids, all that type of stuff. So, they're not right for our operation anymore, but they're perfect for the person who bought it. Um, and sometimes it's just you had too many female pigs at the end of the year, too many heifers, and you're just like, no, I only bought enough hay to get 12 cows through the winter, and we have 14 out there. So we're gonna pick two and they're getting sold. And they can get sold to another farmer, they could get sold to, through the auction, butcher plant type thing. It doesn't matter. Like, you're selling them, they aren't on your property anymore. Another thing they can do is change jobs. So say you have a milk cow that she's not like she just doesn't produce enough milk. Like she drives herself off early, blah, blah, blah. We actually have a milk cow like that. She drives herself off after about 5 to 6 months. Which is understandable because she's also half Dexter, which Dexters make good milk cows. She's Dexter Jersey. It's known as a Belfair. We love the flavor of her milk. Like, oh my gosh, it is worth it to keep her just for the flavor of her milk. And she's actually bred to a brown Swiss bull. And if we get a heifer out of her, I am 100% keeping her because just in hopes of that milk will taste anything like Bailey's. Um, but Bailey's calves have filled our freezer every year for the last 5 years. I mean, just that alone, that she has good calves, she raises them, she weans them, we are able to butcher them right on time. Um, and we have full freezers of beef. I mean, just that. Like, so yes, she is our main milk cow because we love her milk. We do have another milk cow that we like her milk too. We'll drink it, we'll sell it. We do not sell Bailey's milk. Like that is ours. We only get it for a few months. We are not sharing that with anybody. I don't even like sharing it with the calf, but you know. Um, we have considered pulling her calves and bottle feeding. We've done it a couple times, but she's just a really good mom, and she still gives us like a gallon or two a day, which is way more than we even can use. So a lot of times, I mean, we're making yogurts out of it and things like that. We are trying to get a freeze dryer, so we'll be able to freeze dry more of her milk, which will be awesome. Um, so yeah, you have a milk cow that isn't quite doing her job, but she is a good mother in other ways. She can be what we call our beef maker. The next one's butchering. Sometimes butchering was the plan all along. You buy, piglets in the spring and you're going to butcher them in the fall, or it's a steer that finally reached the right weight and you're going into winter and you're like, okay, we need to get him a butcher date. Like, I don't want to feed him through winter because he is not going to have the same efficiency. So feed efficiency is how much feed they consume versus, how many pounds they're gaining from that. And once you hit winter, they're using their calories to stay warm versus using those calories to grow larger. So if you have a steer that's ready to butcher in the fall, get the first butcher date you can, because at that point you're just throwing money at them. Uh, the next one is euthanasia, the one we just don't want to talk about. Sometimes, like I said, sausage sows, they're great, whether they're for you or for someone else. Like I said, their meat can sometimes be a little stronger, and so they're better for sausage and for smoked products and things like that than fresh meat, and it can be a little tougher. You can do the same thing with older cows. They make great hamburger. Um, an old hen, she's gonna be good in a crock pot or for making broth out of, whatever. There's just a lot of options that, even if it's euthanasia, and I say that like, because I'm talking about still eating some of these. But there's a difference between like butchering a really good animal that's going to stock your freezer versus being like, this animal just no longer has use on our property. Like, what can we still use them for? Um, and sometimes what you can still use them for is getting some exercise, digging a hole. And I know that sounds really crass, but it's just the truth sometimes. So dog food is another one we'll do a lot. If we have like an older goat or something, we will eat goat, we'll eat lamb, but once they get older, that's just something we're not interested in anymore. But the dogs really don't care. They're just happy they're getting meat. Um, I talked about the wildlife preserves. You can do that. Sometimes if you have an animal that you can't get rid of, or if it dies over the winter and you can't dig a hole or whatever, you can sometimes call Fish and Game and they'll come get it to keep predators from like coming onto your property. They actually have a lot of options, like they'll help with depredation plans and fencing and things like that for dealing with predators. So look into those options if you're having any of those issues. Now, sometimes if the animal is sick, has an infection, or some sort of serious injury that they need to be put down quick, and we don't have an option for butchering them in another way, or if they got injured and like died on their own, and we don't find them, we don't know how long they've been down. Then yeah, there's not an option for eating them in any way, and they do just need to be put down. Uh, So the next one, like, okay, that was a really bummer conversation, but I do have, where is it at? For those of you who watch on YouTube, I have a Homestead livestock culling decision chart. You can get it for free on my site. I have it under freebies and it's in my store. It's just a one-page download, and it just goes through asking yourself the questions of, should this animal still stay on the property? And, it talks about, are they still producing their age? Do they need extra care, extra feed? Do they have some other type of value? And does it meet industry standards? And then you answer yes or no. And based on how many you circle, then it tells you what your decision should be. So it's an easy one to just download, make that decision. It also makes it easier when you're having to explain it to your kids. If they're struggling with it, that's a really good way to do that. Or if you're struggling with making the decision to get rid of an animal that you're emotionally attached to, but know that that's the right decision, doing the chart can really help. So the next one is breeding. A lot of people do breed in the fall. And like I said, it's when you have all your animals up in the barn, ready to go. Um, you might have your AI tech there, whatever it might be. So you just breed at the same time, or you can change pens where the cows are in with the bull or whatever it is you're doing. Um, there's lots of different reasons that you might want to breed at different times. Um, I grew up in a fairly mild climate in the mountains of Northern California. Our cows calved both in the spring and in the fall. We never had to worry about if, um, yeah, we had to worry about like predators and stuff like that, but we didn't really have to worry about the weather affecting the calves unless they were born like in a rainstorm. And still, usually it was a warm enough rainstorm that it wasn't an issue. Whereas here in Idaho, if an animal's being born in the winter, we do have it happen. And I'm going to get into that, but we have to stay on top of it and be ready and, have the barn space ready to go for them and things like that that we didn't have to do in California. So, one of the reasons that you would breed in the fall, marketing. If you're making any money off of your homestead, marketing, you need to have animals or plants or whatever it is that you're doing, um, ready to go. That's how you make your money. So we we breed our pigs for marketing reasons and three different reasons, or for three different groups. So I put the boar in with the sows in the middle of September to make sure that I have piglets born as early in January as possible, because those are the ones that go to our local fair. They need to be born in the calendar year. Um, and then they have to be between 220 pounds and 300 pounds the first week of August. So that's a really tight window. I mean, pigs need to be between 6 and 9 months when they're butchered, and sometimes they can go out to like a year, especially if you're pasturing them. So to make sure that these pigs make weight by the first week of August, that's only a 7 month grow time or less. They have to be pushed hard. And a lot of pigs don't make weight for our fair. So I have to have those pigs ready to go. We do have another local fair that's a few weeks later. So if I have piglets born in late January, early February, I can sell to them and it's fine. Um, then because I mean that's kind of what happens is some of my pigs will get bred on that first heat, but some of them won't hit it till like, 3 weeks later or something. And that's why we get those later piglets. Farrowing in January in North Idaho is horrible, and we don't have a heated barn. So we have to just try to keep it as warm as we can. We have heat lamps, we use straw or have tarps up and things like that. We're hoping to get that a little better this year. But really, it always just comes down to money and sometimes time. But these are the things that we're doing to save that. But, if we could fix some of those things in our barn, we would lose less piglets to the cold and that money would come back to us. So the next market we have is people who want to raise pigs for this fall butcher. And so I have some sows, like if they didn't take and don't farrow until March. And then I have some sows that, because we do all live cover, we don't do AI at all. We have some sows that, if they have their piglets right at the 1st of January and I wean at 30 days, depending on their body condition, they can hit that next heat and then they're having their piglets like April. I usually, that's the only time I push them. After that litter, then they kind of just chill out until fall. And I'll usually have one or two that was a later breeder or a later farrower to farrow in the fall for those piglets. And then I have some people that do like fall piglets, because it's a leaner meat from them, like maintaining their temperature all winter. Um, and a lot of people around here raise more heritage type breeds. We do, which means the meat's still marbled with fat, which makes it a lot more delicious. But you kind of to get that leaner meat, you have to do it over the winter. The third market is we do retail cuts, so I have to be able to have pigs at butcher weight year round. I can pretty much hit those 3 cycles I just told you about and hold some back for ourselves. And those are the ones that I raise out for whole hogs or retail with my customers. So that was all from a marketing. The other thing you need to consider is convenience and ethics. So when I say like convenience, um, because my travel schedule is so crazy, it's better for us for our cows to calve kind of fall, early winter before it gets too cold, because then I'm home. I'm not working in the garden. I'm not dealing with like other animals. I'm not traveling, all that type of stuff. The kids are not doing sports. So we have the time to milk our cow, to process the milk, to be making cheese, making yogurt, all those things. So that's a convenience for us. And some people do that. Like we like to take a summer vacation, so we want our cow dry during summer vacation. Um, if you're running a full dairy, that's probably not an option. But for us, that's what works best for us. Even with us going to be going back to selling our milk again here in the next few months, there's a lot of different producers in our area, and everybody has different dry times, and it'll just work out and it'll be okay. So, then it becomes like the ethics part. Um, if you aren't ready to deal with breeding animals, um, don't do it. Like some people just, they don't have their facilities in place, they don't have the money to do it, they don't have the markets for the animals after they're born. And so that's something that really needs to be considered when you're deciding when to breed. And I'm not even saying that to be harsh, like get ready, like do it the next year. Um, but sometimes it's just not right. Or um if you have cows that are, heifers that aren't old enough to be bred in the fall, you want to make sure they don't go out to pasture with the bull, like they're held back to this for like spring breeding and stuff like that. So those are the things that really need to be considered with animals. And I'm talking about animals a lot, but that's kind of where my forte is. Again, I have a barn guide. I didn't print it out because it's really bright colored and stuff, but you can get that. I think it's for free on my site as well. Um, you can print it out and it has all the dates, and you can just be like, if I breed this day, this is what day they'll be born. And you can do it backwards too. Like if I need animals born um in April, then I need to go back and see what day I should breed them. And so that it's really handy like that. And it comes out on separate pages. So like if you incubate your chickens like in the shop, you can have one up there. But then like, your pig rotation might be somewhere else or something. So the next one is maintaining your farm equipment. Preventative maintenance. It's so important. I was a quality assurance manager in commercial food and agriculture plants for years. Um, it was all, time is money. And if your equipment is down or you're having to work on your equipment, you're losing money. And so it's, I even deal with it on our homestead with my husband. I'm going to kind of like throw him under the bus on this one a little bit. He's a great mechanic, like a wonderful mechanic. So with that, he's like, oh, whatever. Like if it's not running in the spring, I'll just get it running again. And I'm like, no, because when I need the rototiller, my schedule and stuff like that is I need the rototiller today. And then I'm like, okay, I need the rototiller today. And he's like, oh, well, I don't know if it's running. I'm like, well, go see if it's running. And then he goes out, it takes him 2 days to get it running. He has to buy parts. Where if he would have, done the steps of preventative maintenance in the fall, there's a much higher chance that we could just go out and start up the rototiller and have it that day, even if it needs a little bit of like a clean out or something. Um, Now, I'm not a mechanic. I don't expect you to be a mechanic. Sometimes doing your preventative maintenance, though, is literally you out in the shop with a YouTube video making sure it happens. Sometimes it's getting a tractor tech out to your property to, do hydraulic fluid and stuff on your tractor. But learn how to work on your equipment the best you can. Keep your maintenance logs. When you're done with equipment for the season, make sure it has everything that it needs. And like in the summer, like at the end of summer, you're putting away your rototillers, your mowers, your weed eaters, your hedge trimmers, tractor implements, sometimes your chainsaw. On the flip side, in the spring, you are doing the preventative maintenance on your snow blowers, your plows, things like that. Um, so what you want to do your maintenance is you want to make sure that they are cleaned well, that you are greasing anything that can rust while it's sitting, that it has all of its oils. If you need to change or fill the oils, dispose of all the oils properly, sharpen any blades. Um, One thing that we will do in the winter is with our small engines is we put something called stable in them. It's an additive to the fuel, so you can have a full tank, add the stable, and the gas is good in the spring. You can literally just go start it up and it's ready to go. Change bad spark plugs, any of those types of things that need to be done. And then put them in a covered place where they're dry. If you don't have a place for that, put a tarp over them, secure it tightly. But here's what I really, really push is keeping records of that. And I have another free guide. I know I have all these free guides for this. Um, so an equipment record guide. And the reason I think that this is so important, is for one, what happened to your equipment. If you run a bigger farm, you might have, different, teenagers who come and work on the farm and them having to like mark off that they changed the oil or something. Then you know that it was done and you can check that and you know the status of your equipment. Another one, if you ever want to sell a piece of equipment, being able to show all the maintenance that you did is going to make that piece of equipment worth more than the same piece of equipment being sold on Craigslist. Um, Another one is if you have all of like what type, the make and the model, what type of fluids it needs. It just makes it easier. Like, if you're a guy and you're sending your wife to the store to pick up all the fluids, you can just like shoot her a picture of this, or she can have it like in a folder in the truck or something, and she can make sure that she's getting all the right stuff and you don't have those issues. Another one, my husband does it all the time. He comes in the house and he's like, "Hey, I need to order a part for whatever piece of equipment." And he has to sit there and like Google and figure out what piece of equipment he has in order to get the model number, especially with our older ones that you can't see them as well. So if you already have all that information written down, it's just going to save you time. You call the dealer or the repair shop rather than being like, the thingy on my lawnmower doesn't work. You can literally say, like, this is my brand of um, lawnmower. This is the make and model, and this is the piece that isn't working and what I need to order. And it's just going to save you a lot. Um, so let's see. Next is staying warm. If you live anywhere rurally, you are probably running off of wood or propane heat. So you actually need to be cutting your firewood all year long and the year before because your firewood has to be seasoned, meaning it's sat out for a year and dried. Um, and getting that all in and stocked. Or hopefully you've been saving money and now you can go order like 200 gallons of propane to make sure you can get through the winter or whatever it is you need. Um, You can put your gardens to sleep. For a lot of people, that's still planting garlic, that's putting mulch down, that's cleaning out your beds and having it ready so that in the spring when you go out there, you're ready to go. Like you just plant and go. Um, any late season harvest, like we just went through that. Uh, we picked a whole bunch of apples. We had some tomatoes that were still on the vine and we had a freeze, so I went and pulled some of those off and was dealing with them. We, oh man, we processed, I think, 200 or 300 pounds of apples. We made apple juice, applesauce, apple pie filling, apple butter. We're gonna make apple vinegar with all the scraps or apple cider vinegar. We did a whole freezer clean out where we took all of our older meat and either made dog food or sausage for ourselves. Everything's condensed down, and we have room for any winter butchers that we do, or if we get, a deer at hunting season and stuff. I always like to clean the property. I always hate, you get snow and then it freezes and it thaws and it freezes and it thaws and you walk out to your truck and you roll your ankle on a kid's shoe that has been under the ice for the last 6 months. Like just clean up before the snow starts and then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. We have dogs and stuff and we kind of laugh. Like when everything melts in the spring, there's like bits of paper and bones and all sorts of stuff that the dogs have been playing with all year and we didn't even know they were there because they got snowed over. Um, Make sure all your buildings are good to go, that you've set mouse traps, that you've um, fixed any areas where like, the roof, if it's leaking, all that type of stuff. You do not want to be fixing that roof in the middle of winter. Uh, Winterizing livestock waters. That is a huge one for us because ours freeze every winter. So we try to make sure that we have heaters or like we have these non-freeze hydrants. Those are kind of expensive to put in, but they're definitely worth it. We have a lot of those. And then for our smaller pens where pigs are rotating out of, we actually use the rubber like feeders because if they get full of ice, I make sure we have several on hand. And you can actually just flip them over and like stomp on them and the ice just pops out and you can put new water in. So that's cool to be able to have. Storing up animal feed. So we buy our feed in bulk and like I don't even mean like we buy a lot of bags or even like we do buy tons, but sometimes we buy 5, 6 tons at a time. So we have to make sure that those are on pallets, that they're in the barn. And we just bought a truckload of hay. So I'm not talking a pickup truck, I'm talking a semi load of hay. That was like $4,000. I had to save for that all summer. They came, they delivered it. And so we had to order that hay in advance because our hay supplier, they have to make sure, hay is not something that you can just make more of. I mean, you can on a yearly basis, but if you run out of hay for the year, you're not making more. So I need to put in those orders with um, my suppliers early because I'm buying from small farms. So they need to know like what to order, like seed wise for the next year, or if I'm ordering grain or something from them, they need to be able to let their supplier of grain know how much they're going to need for the following year. So this isn't something that starts in November for us. It's something that we're having a year-round conversation with our suppliers and saving money for these things. Stocking up on personal food. I kind of just talked about some of the food preservation that we've done. We always make sure that we have plenty of water. I don't know if you've ever heard the trick. Any canning jars you're not using, you fill them with water and seal them up and put them on the shelf. If you run out of water, like, if your pipes freeze or if you have a power outage for a few days and you don't have enough water, those are really great for cooking with. We don't usually drink that water just because, but I'll buy water in bottles. Just for the bare minimums. I'm not talking long-term prepping. I'm talking like losing power for a weekend or not being able to travel the roads because of a snowstorm. Um, and then enjoy your fall, make some time for fall hunting season, get out there, have some experiences with your kids, stock your freezer with some wild meats, and choose some good books to read because the days are getting shorter. You can't be outside. This is when you can read the books you've been wanting to read, learn the homestead skills that don't require you being outside, learning how to do sourdough. Like I'm really bad. I let my sourdough die every March, we have our last loaf of sourdough with St. Patty's Day. And November 1st, I start a new sourdough starter. I usually buy it as a freeze dried, but sometimes I'll just start it from scratch depending on the mood I'm in. And then we do that every year because I'm just really bad at maintaining my sourdough over the winter. And I know I can put it in the fridge, but I don't know. It's just my thing. But you can master things like sourdough. You can master your cooking skills. You can master canning. Like you can still buy, crates of stuff right now. Like go get it, freeze it, and can it later. Like I do that all the time with tomatoes. I freeze tomatoes because they're just coming in abundance in August and I have no time to can them. I freeze them all in bags. I do that with huckleberries. I do it with elderberries, and then we use them as we need them. You can learn how to make tinctures over the winter. You can learn crafting skills. Like just because like enjoy the time of rest, but also enjoy the time that you have to embrace the things you can't do when you're out working on your homestead. So I hope everyone has a great winter. Um, I'll link all of the stuff I talked about in the show notes and that you learned something today and you keep growing. Talk to you next week. It's going to be a good one. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!